Okay, now it's time for your questions. Before you start asking questions, I would like to ask you, if you have a question, raise your hand, and you will be... Sorry? Later, later. And you will be, by the order that you put your hand in the air, asked to ask your question. Anybody? Okay, start, please.
Good evening. My name is Jana Balazsova, and I am representing here the European Commission DG Justice, a leading DG within the European Commission for EU Roma-related issues. Actually, I don't have a question for the panelists. I have only the following comment.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yes, the European Commission supports the continuation of the decade. Of course, there are new developments. There is a EU framework for national Roma integration strategies, and we would like to avoid the duplicity, and we would like to focus member states to report within the EU framework. Tomorrow in my speech, I will update you on recent activities and on our way forward. For example, the next week we will call for the network of national Roma contact points. So we will push member states to report within the EU framework. However, the EU framework cannot cover the enlargement countries from the institutional point of view. EU framework covers only the member state. So that's why we see the reason for the continuation of the decade and focus on enlargement countries. We would like decade to learn from the experience and to help enlargement countries to develop their national strategies in line of the EU framework. Thank you.
Does anybody have any comment?
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Go on.
Yeah, she's formally.
No, it was not part of the debate, it was true what you said.
Okay, other questions?
My name is Adem, I come from the Decade Secretariat, the organization that moves everything forward, but now the question goes immediately as a follow-up to what Jana said, and my question will go to Nadir and or Gabor. Should the decade continue if the Commission supports it?
Can I before? No.
Wait, let's first hear the answer and then you'll have a chance.
Definitely no, because the Commission will not influence much more change of the process. And I didn't have enough time to speak about the operational lacks that within the decade we identified in all these 8 years. If we look back how we addressed the decade, with the steering committee meetings, with the conferences, with the workshops, with the Decade Trust Fund, with the civil society participation, partnership, and international organizations. I mean, this rhetoric created another reality which is very far from the Roma reality on the daily life. And even the Commission debates, which are going constantly in Brussels, are even more far. So I don't believe that Commission will contribute to change radically the situation. On the other side, I have a lot of remarks about the steering committee meetings, about the format, about the agenda set up, the priorities, and how they are reflected on the ground on Roma issues. And I just wanted to mention that the steering committee meetings missed to address properly the events with Jobbik in Hungary, with France events, with Berlusconi in Italy. This body had a very good opportunities to talk officially on behalf of Roma, of these state representatives. And there was no clear, maybe understanding about the importance of this forum and how representative is towards the other players, which are also dealing with Roma issues. And so that's my answer, that the Commission which will much more confuse the process, because the Commission is also another political entity with different political agendas and interests on Roma issues.
Only one sentence. God knows. We will know the details. We will be able to answer your question.
Okay, you can.
Thank you.
It's working. Yeah. Thank you, Croatia. Thank you especially for nice dinner. But I don't think take word to say something before Miss Diana don't speaking. If Commission support Roma community like till now, please stop decade. Why? I know Commission relocate big money, but where is going this big money? In Bosnia, we have tradition to say, uncle bring, uncle eat. You understand me? Yes. I talking about IPA program. Because all IPA program
Okay.
cannot implement
Sir,
any...
your
sorry?
question should be directed to the panelists.
I'm really short.
Okay.
How I know? All IPA programs is implementing from international NGOs. Big salary, nice residency, nice car, nice travels, nice hotels, and what Roma get? Nothing. Thank you.
Okay, so there's no question. Okay, next one.
Yeah, but we understood that you are on site, never. You are on site.
Please vote for us.
Don't forget when you have to make the crosses.
Okay, any question more? Okay. Okay.
Thank you. I have a question for the affirmative side that believes that the decade should be continued. And I believe that things should be continued only if they are deemed a success. And what is a success? Something that changes the way we think about things. Now, whole night we're talking here about Roma as being the problem. And also one of the things that I have a hard time liking about the decade of Roma inclusion is the fact that Slovenia has a population of 2 million. Croatia has a population of what are we at, 5 now? Well, there is 12 million Roma living in Europe. Why are they still considered a minority? So I want to ask the ladies who are arguing that the decade should continue, what is it that the decade has done to change our way of thinking about what we're talking about right now? Thank you.
Okay, I can. Okay, I can try to ask to your question. I think that we missed a very important moment that the decade, it was also the initiative, the movement which tried to create opportunities, to build up a framework, to offer opportunities. We systematically denied opportunities for Roma in our countries. And now I know that here is a very honorable audience, but I will dare to use maybe not very common words to describe the situation. The decade point out that we have a problem, and let's put it in a very direct way, that we don't like when the dirt is coming up there and to the surface and is showing us exactly where the problems are. And yeah, we don't like that the ugliness is coming up there. And all these things has been highlighted also thanks to the decade. Also thanks to the questions and the projects started by the decade. Also by the fact that the decade started to push on governments to give us figures, to give us data, to inform us in an appropriate way which is really the situation. In all this complex area, which my colleague has having some doubts. So that's my answer for you. Thank you.
We have a question over there.
My question goes to those who are calling for an immediate end to the decade. One of the reasons for proffered for ending the decade right here, right now, was the EU framework. Surely this is an argument for continuing the decade. The European Commission has taken the template of the decade and turned it into something that is backed by 22 member states, by council decisions. Has the possibility of addressing the misuse and abuse of EU funds at national and regional level, but does not have the mechanism to coordinate in the enlargement countries. The enlargement component of the EU framework is extremely important because there was a tendency for it to be an EU framework and to ignore our nearest neighbours. The decade offers structures to ensure that accession countries can become full members of the EU framework programme. So your argument that the framework renders the decade redundant, I would challenge in saying that the framework presents the decade for a new raison d'etre to take it beyond 2015. And how would you respond to that, gentlemen?
So, if I correctly understood your question, how should we continue without the decade? Yes? That's your question, or with the decade?
It's easier to misunderstand.
Okay. After the EU framework announced in 2010 and the first steps that are done within the EU with the EU platform on Roma, we are witnessing that even their machinery is lower than the decade machinery. And this is very early warning sign for us, as I've been also warning the civil society representatives in my country and within the decade forums that we have to react in right time, in proper way about the whole process. If we leave it just to different influences out of Roma interest, that it will not work. On the other side, within the decade, I would like to have any kind of opposition from the floor that the decade was much more better treated or respected on Roma issues in the Balkan countries than in the Central European countries. And I believe that Balkan countries can also continue without the decade because the policies there, the budget lines allocated, and the structures set up, inviting Roma within the state system to serve the administration, are also there, and for sure they will continue to work. The pre-accession funds are there and keeping the robust control monitoring to the accession. And even now the Commission is putting new and new demands during the Euro integration path. So, I mean, the decade is not needed process again to the Western Balkan countries.
To clarify a question, you say that EU framework is good not only for the EU countries, but the accessing countries as well. Am I right? Just say yes or no. No. Okay. But if you wanted to say this, I would put back the question. I would put back the question, are we sure that the EU framework is a strong tool to be used in the countries and to change the situation? I say that EU framework is a good start. But how it's translated into the national strategies and how it's monitorized or not monitorized, or how to, it has to be made with an independent, I call this reality check system. It's a totally another question. And this is what is needed. I suppose that we have to stop.
Because they broke the rule, I want one more.
I guess it's time to slowly wrap up the questions.
And also, because we want to have a reciprocal, because they broke the rule and we would like also to broke once.
I'm sorry, don't generalize. I didn't broke the rule and I don't like presidency, so
No,
then
no,
I will
please,
have to react
please.
too. I'm sorry
But this is
to
very
say that.
important point that I would like to say that the EU framework is also starting with the very bad conceptual point, that all the policies or measures targeting Roma are going to be based on social inclusion agenda. And we are witnessing how the social agenda within the EU is changing, shifting within the last, let's say, 10 years. No, in 10 years, they changed several times. They are focused within the social policy agendas in the Union. Even they are still trying to coordinate among the member states the social agenda within the Union, and how they are going to deal with Roma based on this. Roma issue is not anymore social problem. It's becoming developmental problem, but also political problem. And this migration issues and demographic issues are also bringing this dimension to the problem. Thank you.
Okay. We'll stop with the questions now and try not to break any more rules. I would like to ask the affirmative side for their summary. Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. So, as French people said, the best on the end, the desserts and concluding remarks. Okay, so let's see the concluding remarks from our point of view. I prepared many notes here, but I decided after this discussion to, without having a minimalistic approach, to simplify everything. It's very easy, in my opinion, right now. We know that we create room for opportunities and participation, cooperation, joint activities, that we highlighted problems and also good results that we supported, we are supporting, and we're going to support Roma participation, that we started finally to implement things, projects, ideas, whatever you want, for people, with people. And we are trying to understand, to analyze, evaluate, and understand better where we are and how to improve our actions for the future. This is, I think, that this very positive and this big yes. You don't have to take this alternative, and you can take the other one. You can say no, and that's very easy. Let's continue to segregate, let's continue to discriminate, let's continue to push people on the margins, and let's continue to simply to ignore them. This is really very easy. Doesn't need efforts, doesn't need understanding, doesn't need money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I will also try to summarize our common points why the decade should stop. I have 3 minutes, and then I will speak about basically if you are still believing that the decade should continue, that you are going to believe in the optical illusion that is created within these 8 years, because and you are going to be very naive to believe in such a illusion. On the other side, I missed to say that even the civil society has lost its role within the decade, because all the time within the Decade Forum, the legitimacy role of the civil society was always questioned within this forum. Even the intentions of the civil society were the best one. But we once again witnessed that good intentions do not produce results. Also, I would like to think that we should leave the Roma agenda as it is now. It's very open to everybody. Everybody is familiar what is going on with Roma. A lot of researchers entered Roma houses, families, witnessed the situation. So everybody is convinced that the Roma problem, how it is, what should be done. And the governments are there with their policies. They have the obligation to continue with their policies, with or without the decade. Leave the Roma to the constructive destruction as is it used in the capitalist system, that this approach is the best to function for every individual in the future. As it is now, Roma are just passive, as I mentioned, subject of the decade, and they are just suffering from the externalities of this process, because most profitable or most beneficiaries of this are those who are more skilled than ordinary Roma, mainly new experts on Roma coming from different organizations or things. Basically, the Roma are still waiting another to solve their problem. No, it's time that Roma start to think how to solve their own problem. And the last is that we agreed with Gabor that our message is that the decade should stop in this format, but not definitely to continue in this way. It should be replaced with another approach, with another name, maybe with another policy, with another frame, but much more concretely based on these lessons learned. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, before you vote again, I would like to point one more time that the ideas and arguments here are not point of views of the panelists or their organization. They were just asked to play the role in the debate to start thinking a little bit. So I would like to ask you to vote one more time. Thank you. No, they have another. Yeah. This is before?
Yeah, you're right. Okay, sorry.
Before? Sorry? Okay. Can I ask you to vote by hand, not to pass around?
We would like evidence.
Okay, you will film the evidence.
But
Okay.
someone will
Okay.
hesitate.
Should the decade continue after 2015? If for yes, please raise your hands.
Should it continue?
Should it continue? Okay, it's
You cannot vote.
so it's quite a different. It shifted from one side to another. Okay. Thank you for participating in this debate and have a nice stay in Zagreb and a nice conference.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to say thank you on behalf of the Decade Secretariat for you to be present and be, witness of this innovative idea of this dinner accompanied by the debate. And thank you very much for Maya, who is a debate coach and who was working with us on a voluntary basis to help the panelists. And thanks for Hannah, and thanks for the panelists being ready and put efforts and time to this debate. Thank you very much.